Good day, subscribers. I'm doing great today. I hope you're all well. It's been a beautiful day out. Got a long weekend ahead of us. God is good, so what more could I ask for? Now, today I'll be talking about why I just took a pretty sizable position in my portfolio in Nio, which is basically the Tesla of China. Very similar to Tesla. If you look into Nio's vehicles, their vehicle lineup, very similar to Tesla in terms of how they look, their performance, the battery sizes, the type of vehicles. They're both in the luxury market. But until recently, or until now, Nio has basically been exclusively a Chinese company, a Chinese brand. I'll get into a lot of the details into why I decided to go long Nio in particular, looking at some really beaten down Chinese stocks listed also on the US stock exchange. First off, though, I think it is important to touch on the macro picture of why I am bullish on a stock like Nio in the coming months, probably even through the entire coming year. Some of this might begin to change should my overall macro picture change, but that will be a gradual change. It's not going to change in a matter of just a few weeks or months. So for at least the next 6 months, I'm very bullish on stocks like Nio that are very beaten down from their all-time highs, that were very much so popular in previous bull cycles, and that are still doing fundamentally sound as companies. Now, overall, the macro picture, at least from what I can see, is a return to bullish sentiment overall. And this is really looking at US stock markets mainly. But I do think this will spill into stock markets around the world as well, as particularly looking at the Fed, as investors begin to see, okay, the Fed's tightening cycle is over. The Fed has basically said that they're going to be cutting rates next. And Jerome Powell even hinted that they would be doing 3 separate rate cuts this coming year, 2024. He was actually a lot more dovish than the Fed typically is at their monthly meetings just a few weeks ago in December. And that, of course, spiked the stock markets, bond markets, crypto, gold, silver, basically everything rallied on this because investors kind of just loosed the floodgates of liquidity. And I do expect that to continue going into this coming year. Of course, I've had the pleasure of talking with David Hunter 3 times now. I'll actually be talking with him again in a few weeks. He's really been somebody I've seen as being very accurate in terms of his overall predictions. He doesn't always get things right here and there, but his overall predictions of market dynamics and things like that are very correct. He ultimately looks in terms of what are investors least expecting, where is the herd mentality typically going, and it's actually kind of the opposite direction that things usually end up going. After all, if everybody's in on a certain direction that they see things going, oh no, the market's going to crash, people are going to act on that, and ultimately it's going to be very hard for the markets to actually crash as a result, because people aren't getting into the markets all euphoric, and you can't really have a market crash when everybody is skeptical and on the sidelines. Now, when it comes to opening the floodgates of liquidity again and euphoria returning to the markets and everybody getting optimistic about basically any stock and bidding it up to obscene valuations at times, and there are some obscenely valued stocks right now, a lot of them actually, but I do expect that to actually continue. So I wouldn't fight this trend right now if I were to do that. And that is fundamentally why I went long a stock like Nio. Now, Nio was a very popular stock back in the 2020 and 2021 era. There were a lot of US investors who made a lot of money on that stock because it ran up from about $4 to about $65 after the COVID crash and then the spike that happened after that. So a lot of people made a lot of money on it. It became very popular, kind of like a stock like Tesla or GameStop. It became very well known in a lot of the trading social media platforms around the US for sure, and also other countries where there's enough wealthy people to basically do this. Um, but I do expect that to return to a stock like Nio. We've seen this with other stocks, of course. They've returned to the spotlight. Nvidia was a big winner in the last year. They also were winners previously. Of course, they're a semiconductor company. Looking at Nio in particular, though, they do have a lot going for them in the coming year, even though they are not a profitable company. So, kind of from a fundamentalist value investor standpoint, yeah, no, Nio would not be a good investment right now. You even something like Tesla, it's a hard sell right now just simply because of how obscenely Tesla is valued. And while I do think a stock like Tesla will probably continue to perform well when liquidity, when that keeps flooding into the market, investors bidding at prices, I think something like Nio could do a lot better given how much Nio is beaten down from its all-time highs right now. It has a market cap of around $14 billion, which is nothing compared to Tesla's $800 billion market cap. That's peanuts for Nio to be given a market cap like that. Obviously, Nio is not yet profitable. They don't have all these fancy robots like what Tesla does. They don't have the Cybertruck yet, at least. But look at their production numbers. They're actually producing, well over 100,000 EVs a year in China. And that's their only market right now. To my knowledge, they don't really have presence in other markets yet. They do have a lot of sales centers here and there. So maybe they have vehicles in other countries as well in Europe. But as far as the North American EV market, Nio has not even touched that yet. And looking at the luxury car market, North America is really it's a huge market. There's only a certain number of people in China, even though there's a billion people in China. Not many people in China in percentage terms can afford $100,000 vehicle, which Nio is really targeting. It's the Lucid Air, it's the Tesla Model S that they're really competing with. It's not your Tesla Model 3, Nissan Leaf, lower grade electric vehicle. They're really targeting top of the line luxury EVs. Looking at a lot of Nio's technology, it's also pretty cutting edge. Maybe not quite much as so as Tesla, but Nio actually has a lot of battery swapping technology that Tesla really has not tried to do yet. Tesla's batteries are basically fixed in the vehicle for a while. You can get them replaced when they do wear out, which EV batteries unfortunately do wear out. That's a huge expenditure. Nio's batteries actually can be swapped very quickly between some of their newer car models, and this has really been popularized in a lot of the major cities in China where they're able to have these swap centers. And instead of having to charge your car, you pull up and swap your battery in a few minutes and you have a fresh battery in your vehicle. Another thing I will point out is, like Tesla, Nio's cars have a lot of range. And of course, this ties in with them targeting a luxury EV market, but even more so than Tesla, Nio actually could have a lot more range coming up than your premium Tesla Model S. So Nio's top of the line ET7, ET9, I believe as well, is going to have roughly a 1,000 kilometer range at the top of the line. So that's over 600 miles of range in an electric vehicle. That's more than most gasoline cars get on a tank of gas. So that's huge. You really erase a lot of anxiety about any sort of range issues at that point. Not to mention that you could probably swap a battery. So bottom line, technology in Nio is pretty advanced as well. They're definitely a Tesla comparison to China. Sure, Tesla also has a factory in China, but Nio is actually very popular in China. Of course, they might see it as kind of the, nationalized brand in China. But Nios, are popular around, other countries, markets as well. Even though they aren't in these markets yet, I do think they could do very well in a market like the U.S. But bottom line, it's mainly from the macro standpoint that I went long Nio. but also looking at some of the previous dynamics that have played out of it kind of being a meme stock in the past. It also has a large following that is going to get behind it again. Technicals do look good right now. So it broke out in July of this year. It did retest its lows of about $7 just a few weeks ago, and now it's back up to about $9. So, I mean, it's very close to its yearly low. You're nowhere close to your all-time highs. Market cap very low compared to other EV manufacturers out there. They just received a large, basically infusion of cash from a Arab investment group. So the company as a whole is not struggling for cash, even though they are not profitable and they are losing money annually. If that changes, I do think the valuation of Nio does change very dramatically. That's even beyond my expectations. I'm not counting on them becoming profitable, but I do think there are some encouraging signs leading that direction. I do think a lot of the sort of tech hype behind Nio will continue to play into it as well. What might invalidate this investment of mine would be if, of course, the macro picture doesn't play out as I think it will, if liquidity dries up from here, if the Fed tightens more, all of that would change this, because it is basically all dependent on the overall macro outlook that I have. In that kind of a scenario, I would not be optimistic on basically all of the investments I have right now. But looking specifically at Nio, I do think it performs very well when you get a lot of exuberance added back into the stock market. So all this being said, I would love to know what all of your thoughts are about Nio, maybe EV manufacturers as a whole, how they could perform or underperform in the coming year. All of this being said, I hope you all have a great coming year, 2024. It's going to be a great year, I can tell. Can always look forward to new things. Look in the rearview mirror in the past years, see things that didn't work, and change them. We can always change, add new habits, add new practices for the coming year. So all that being said, let me know what you think about this video in the comments section below. I hope to see all of you again at some point.